Welcome to McDowell House Museum Tour Part 2. So welcome back for those of you who watched Part 1. And if you haven't seen Part 1 yet, you might want to go back and watch it. This is the second half of the tour, and we will be focusing a lot, not exclusively, but a lot on the medical side of the tour in this part. So this is the room where we believe Dr. McDowell performed his famous operation. So Dr. McDowell was a doctor in early America. He practiced from about 1795 to 1830. And back then, medicine was a lot different. So they didn't have anesthesia, they didn't have antibiotics, and of course, no electricity, no running water, and they were still doing things like bloodletting. But they were laying the groundwork for medicine to become more scientific. And so we are going to tell you about, in just a minute, a famous surgery that he did. And it was the first of its kind in the entire world. So before we do that, I think we'll take a little bit of a look around this room. So this is set up as a bedroom because that's what we believe that it was. We believe that this was their traveler's room, what we today would call a guest room. And this is kind of a split level here. This goes up to the master bedroom right here. And if you hear any creaking, this is the creakiest floor in the house by far. We believe this is the older part of the house, that it was built in the 1790s. So that's probably why this part squeaks a little bit more than the rest of it. So you're getting kind of the 360 view here. There's a door that goes downstairs. So there's another staircase. We'll be going down there in just a minute. And let me get the rest of that 360 view for you of the room. So, arguably, of course, this is the most important room in the house. And this is where we usually tell the story of the famous surgery. We also have some medical items in here, some that belong to Dr. McDowell, some that didn't, and some that are disputed. So here we have a bedpan right here and a hot water bottle. Those are both pewter. No, it's a little dark today in this room. This actually has the least good lighting in the house, so hopefully the rest of the house will have better lighting. It's a little bit darker today than it was when I taped the first part on Monday. So this is a saddlebag that may have belonged to Dr. McDowell, and either way, he would have definitely needed a saddlebag to take all his medicines and things on his journeys. So he did have an office, which we're going to see in a little bit, but most of the time he would have gotten on his horse and gone out to people's farms. And remember, there were no phones back then. There were no telegrams. So a messenger would have to come to him and on a horse, and then he would have to ride out on a horse to see a patient. So imagine how long that would take back then in the early 1800s. So you really didn't want to forget anything. You wanted to take all of your medicines and tools with you that you might need. So up here, we have a medical case that we do believe belonged to Dr. McDowell. The jars in there may have as well. And of the medicines in there that we know what they did, that we've been able to do research on, about half of them, let's turn on the light here. It was glaring earlier, but now I think we need it. Of the medicines in here that we know what they did, about half of them are laxatives, and the other half make you throw up. Yes. So that was a lot of what medicine at the time was like. You can see Ipecac right there, of course, pretty famously makes you throw up. They still use that, I believe, today. We've got, I believe, there's rhubarb. And I think, another rhubarb there. So this did not belong to Ephraim right here, but this is a bloodletting instrument. And we're going to see another one of those in the pharmacy that was pretty big at the time, was bloodletting. And they could use a fancy instrument like that, or there were some other options as well, a couple of which we have in the pharmacy. These are feeders. So they did not have IVs back then. And in fact, I've heard they didn't even have straws. So you could use something like this to feed your patient. You can put your medicine or maybe some chicken broth, something like that, in it and just feed your patient. And then over here we have 2 medical jars that we do believe belong to Ephraim. So moving over here are the items that usually get a reaction out of my tours, at least one of these, if not both. So I'm going to take the plexiglass off this one because it's pretty easy to take that off here and let you get a better shot. Would anyone like to guess? And I know, of course, this is recorded, but just be thinking about what you think that these are. I do not think you will get it right. Pretty much no one does. They don't really use these anymore in medicine, thank goodness. So even medical professionals don't get this right. I've had maybe one person get it right in all the time that I've worked here. This is a bladder stone removal kit. So for all of you who have had kidney stones, imagine once it has dropped into your bladder, or perhaps it formed there, imagine these being used to take it out. Yeah. If it would not pass naturally, they could literally cut the stone out of your body, and it was every bit as nasty as you might imagine. So I won't go any more into that right now, since this is a pretty general tour, but I can do it in another case if you all want to hear. So next to that, which really did belong to Dr. McDowell and was, by the way, used on James K. Polk, who later became 11th president of the U.S. We have Polk was just 17 at the time, by the way. Not something you'd want to have to go through at any age, but maybe especially as a teenager. Over here, this did not belong to Ephraim, but it is a amputation kit. So these were pretty common. If you've ever been to like a Civil War battlefield, you've probably seen one of these because they did a lot of amputations on Civil War battlefields. So Ephraim would have had one like this. They didn't change a whole lot. So you have over here, this is a tourniquet, so you can, and it's fancy, it's a screw tourniquet, so you can tighten that around someone's arm or leg and cut off their blood flow. And then you can cut through it, cut through the skin and the muscle with an amputation knife like these. And then you can take a bone saw like this, looks lovely, doesn't it? And saw through the bone. And remember, the surgeon would have to do that with their own just physical power. I've actually been told that they look very similar to this today, but today they are mechanized. So you would have someone back then, they would be held down by one or maybe more than one person, and then the surgeon would physically use these to cut off their arm or leg. Lots of fun. This right here is a Trephine instrument, and it's used to drill a hole in the skull. So this, you can ignore this latter part down here. This is the business end right here. So it's a very small circular saw, and it is serrated. And so that part would go up on the skull, and then you would drill into it until you were through the skull bone. Yeah, lots of fun. So this surgery in 1809 was done on this lady right here, except she was younger at the time. This is Jane Todd Crawford, and she was 46 when the surgery was done on her. And she had a huge stomach, and everyone thought that she was going to have a baby. And in fact, they came to believe she was going to have twins because she had such a huge stomach. And, you know, you didn't go out to Walmart back then and have a test done. And so that's just what people thought. Didn't go have a sonogram, didn't go take one of the tests at Walmart. So they just thought she was going to have a baby. And she started having a lot of pain. And that must be labor because she was really large and must be time for the babies to come. And so one of the local doctors was called in to help her, and he couldn't help her. And a second doctor tried to help her, didn't work. So finally, Dr. McDowell gets called in. And he came to her cabin, and he looks at her and examines her, and he realizes, no, it's not a baby. What it really is a huge abdominal tumor. So she got the news that this was going to be fatal. And Dr. McDowell had to tell her, the best doctors in the world, you know, they say that nothing can be done for this. But he ended up telling her that if she was prepared to die, that he would try a surgery that had never been done before. And she decided that that's what she wanted to do. And Dr. McDowell said that she was going to have to come to Danville. So she made the journey in December on horseback. If y'all can imagine the sickest you have ever felt, and you have to come on horseback in December for 3 days to get the kind of help that you need. So she made that journey, and she made it to Danville. We believe Ephraim let her rest in this room. And so it was time to do the surgery, we believe on Christmas Day, 1809. They would have brought actually a table into the house. May have been over there by the fireplace, since it was December. And they laid her out on the table. They put a handkerchief over her face so she couldn't see what was going on. But there was no anesthesia. They make a 9-inch cut in her stomach with her awake. The tumor is too large to get out that 9-inch cut. They have to cut into the tumor, and they do. They get off about 15 pounds of this nasty gel-like fluid. Then they get out the solid part of the tumor. It weighed about 7 pounds. Altogether, they remove 22.5 pounds of tumor. Her organs have spilled out during this surgery. They bathe them in warm water and put them back in. They sew her up. So far, she has survived. And they would have put her back to a bed like this and let her rest. But, you know, no antibiotics. They knew that infection was a very big danger. But there wasn't much that they could do to help her. They could have changed her bandages, tried to make her comfortable. But very likely this is still the end of her life, even after all she has gone through. Well, amazingly, just 5 days after the surgery, Ephraim comes into her room to check on her, and he finds this tough pioneer lady on her feet making her bed. She goes on to live another 32 years. She lives to be 78, and she outlives Dr. McDowell. So that was the first surgery of its type in the entire world. They said it couldn't be done, but it was. And out here in the West in 1809. So that is why we have this shrine to Dr. McDowell, this museum to Dr. McDowell. We were started by a group of doctors in the 30s. So Jane, super tough lady. Very, very tough. She has a hospital named after herself in Greene County, as Ephraim has one in Danville named after him. There's also a stretch of highway from Danville to Greene County that's named after Jane. So if you have any questions or anything about the surgery, please put them in the comments. This is our dining room here. It is really pretty, but we won't spend too long in here today. We've got some lovely china over here, and we also have some silver. Pretty dining room table. If you'll notice, the chairs and the table didn't match. They don't match today. They didn't have to at that time. So our interpretation here is period appropriate. You did not have to match. That you're looking at through there is the library, which we saw in part 1. So we've pretty much made the complete circle here, but there are still a couple of outbuildings. So we're going to go see the kitchen. Yep, see garden here again. Really lush today. It's not quite as nice a day as it was when we did part 1, but it's very lush. It's still photographing very well. Really beautiful garden. You can see there's a tulip over there that sprung up. I don't remember that from 2 days ago. So we're going to come to the kitchen here, and then if you're especially interested in the medical side, just hold on a little bit longer because we're going to go see the pharmacy. So we'll take a quick pop into the kitchen here, and then we're going to go see the pharmacy. So 1 second, let me get this key right here. All right, so this is our kitchen, and this room just calls to some people. It is a really pretty room. Picturesque here. It would have definitely been a workroom when the McDowells were here. So a lot of hard work was done in this room. The McDowells did unfortunately own slaves, and it would have been the slaves that worked in the kitchen. There would have been a fire in the fireplace going at all times during the day. So it would have been very hot here. And they would have had to make pretty much everything from scratch. Down to, maybe killing the chicken themselves, maybe harvesting some of the vegetables themselves. No electricity, and they did have a well outside, so that's where you had to get water from. We do have some appliances from the time. For example, this is a toaster right here. So you actually put bread in there between those little kind of wire rack there, and then you put it in front of the fire and you turn it with your toe after one side is toasted so that both sides will be toasted. And this is still, you know, kind of what the interior of toasters look like today. So it hasn't changed quite as much as you would think. Though, of course, our experience of using it is very, very different. Rotisserie right here, open back so that you can put that to the fire. Spinning wheel. While food was cooking, the spinning wheel could have been used. Also, they could have made things like candles. Up there, we've got candle molds. This is a meat grinder. And that's a sausage stuffer right there. This one is a beaten biscuit maker. So most people haven't seen one of these before. And what it is you take unleavened bread dough and you put it through here and it gets the air out. And then you can bake your biscuits. And without the air in it, they'll be really hard, but they won't spoil. So you can take them on journeys and you don't have to worry about your bread getting all moldy. This is kind of a regional thing. So most people have never seen this before, but it's pretty cool. A beaten biscuit maker. Of course, we've got a butter churn back there. What historic site is complete without a butter churn, right? Make their own butter. And over here, we've got a sugar chest. So this actually would belong in the dining room or somewhere else where people could see it. This is a showpiece. Back then, sugar was really expensive. And if you could afford a lot of it in an area like this, you would keep it locked up. So the lady of the house would keep the key, and then anyone would have to have her permission to use sugar. So pretty cool right there. All right, so we are going to go see the pharmacy. Once again, please bear with me with this door. All right, so we would come through this side to go to the pharmacy. There's a little archway over here, which is quite pretty. So it's almost like going to a little secret garden back here. If you see these pods on the ground, these are actually what's called Kentucky coffee bean pods. So the early settlers of Kentucky, there are beans in these, and the early settlers of Kentucky, and here's one of the trees right here, would roast the beans inside them and turn them into something similar to coffee. I've heard it's not very good, but it was hard to get coffee in really early Kentucky, so that's what they could do. So this is our little pharmacy. So Ephraim worked here from about 1795 to 1820 when he sold this, and then started working out of an office on the other side. So we're gonna come in up these stairs and in here. So it looks like the tour is probably gonna be about 30 minutes today. Yeah, this is such a nice space. You can see this, we believe, would have been used as storage or an office. So people could come and see Ephraim and get his help on things. He didn't do everything himself. He did have a partner off and on, and he would have had apprentices. Beautiful collection of medical jars here, just really, really fantastic. And of course, you've got to love the gigantic sulfur jar up here. Lots of fun. Beautiful window. Some more medical jars. Over here. So we'll head into the front room, which is gorgeous. So this is our pharmacy. I'm gonna go up here and then kind of do a panorama for you so you get the full effect. This is our pharmacy. Absolutely gorgeous collection of medical jars. They are from the 1800s and before. If you see something in a jar, it will be what it says it is unless it is a narcotic, and we're not allowed to carry it. A lot of the medicine at the time was herbal, and the pharmacist could make their own pills, make their own liquids, make their own ointments. They did a lot of compounding, and in a lot of cases they even grew their own plants. So we think that that's what Ephraim did, that he had a medicinal garden next to this, and that he and his helpers would have grown a lot of their own plants to use in medicine. So let's go a little bit closer, let you get a even better look at these medical jars. Most of the names are in foreign languages. I think we've got a lot of Latin and then some other things. These are probably German right here. Beautiful pink, beautiful blue. There's a handful in English down here. We've got thyme, bay leaves, rosemary leaves, and allspice. So that does give you a pretty good idea of a lot of the things that they used. So we'll come up here and see some of these items. We have over here a stethoscope. Looks very different than what we have today. It's basically a tube. This one usually or often gets people. It is a tooth puller. So let me see if I can get a good shot of the bottom here. You can attach that bottom. Ooh, it looks even nastier on camera or this close up. I don't usually look at it from this angle. You can attach that to a tooth and then yank it out. A lot of fun. Tongue scraper down there. Up here we've got dental instruments and then surgical needles. These are the bleeding instruments that I was telling you about. So we have another one like what we saw upstairs, which is actually a scarificator. And this one has about 12 blades in it. I don't know if they all come out at the same time or not, but they are spring-loaded. So imagine you have the flu, and a doctor comes to your house, rides in on a horse, brings this, puts it up to, say, your arm, presses a little trigger, and boom! Now you're bleeding. Success! They could also use lancets to bleed you, like that one or that. Or they could use, if you don't like the idea of this, they could also use everyone's favorite, leeches. So there you go. We actually have a lovely, gigantic leech jar up here. Leeches live in water, and of course they'd have to be kept alive to be able to bleed people. So doctors could keep them in water, and of course you wouldn't carry a jar like that around, but you could carry them to your patient. Out on your horse so that you could bleed them. So this one is a lot of fun. This is another one at home. You might want to ask yourself, what is this? What is this used for? Well, it's a rectal syringe. Yes, you heard that right. This is a rectal syringe, and this is the business end of it right here. So it could be used for things like enemas. And I actually have it's not exactly a story, but I have kind of a story about this that I'll tell you in just a second. That's a good ending thing, and we're almost at the end here. This is a pill maker. Mortar and pestle here. This is a really, really nice balance. There we go. That's a good shot of it. That's a really nice balance. These are pictures of the cellar downstairs. So you can see you would get to it from a ladder. We used to take people down there, but our insurance doesn't let us do that anymore. So we stopped over a decade, maybe 2 decades or so ago. This is the door to it. So if y'all really want to see the cellar, let me know. And I may do that in a future video. This is a really neat anatomy book that I like to show people. So we're not sure what edition we have, but if it's the first edition, then it's 1822. And if you can just imagine that color and that detail on anatomy for 1822, I mean, it just blows my mind. So, I'll tell you about the rectal syringe. So I was told this by a gentleman who is a medical reenactor, and he knows a ton about the instruments of this time period, just a lot. Hi, doctor. If you happen to be watching this, he goes by the doctor. So he told me that he went to a antique store and he saw one of these. And he knew what it was, but the person who had labeled it did not. They had an antique rectal syringe labeled as an antique cake decorator. So buyer beware when you go to antique stores. Okay, well, I hope everyone has enjoyed getting to go on this tour of McDowell House. And if you're still watching this shortly after I taped it, I'm going to try to come up with some more video ideas. I have some floating around in my head, so I'm going to try to tape a few more videos, maybe for kids, maybe one just on the medical side, things like that. So if there's anything that you want to see that you didn't get to see, or you wanted more detail on, please let me know. Oh, I am also definitely planning on doing a tour of Constitution Square. That's something that we are starting to do pretty soon. We're planning on starting a public tour of Constitution Square. So I'm hoping to use you all a little bit as my guinea pigs with that soon. So that is Constitution Square. And I will leave you with one final shot of the pharmacy. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And have a great day. Bye.